All of us have stories to tell. Documenting our memories helps us process and make sense of the personal experiences that have shaped our lives. We are sharing our memories to honor our parents, ordinary people who worked hard to live their dream and leave behind a legacy of hard work, commitment to helping others, and building strong community.
Oh,
More
good.
iced
You got
tea
some
for
more
you
tea,
guys.
Nance.
Hey, Nance. That looks good. Iced tea.
I know. I remember Mom making tea all the time when we were growing up.
With the tea bags boiling on the
Yeah.
stove, I know. I
That-
never do that anymore.
That was our drink of choice
Yes,
back
it
then.
was.
Yeah,
It wasn't. We never had lemonade.
not too much.
You know, it wasn't like water is today. It was always iced tea.
Things have changed.
Oh, so
Very
much.
much.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
Looking around at Sussex County, it's just, we're experiencing a lot of change and a lot of challenges. I worry about our farmers sometimes.
Yeah,
You
me
know,
too.
how are they really going to be able to continue to farm with all this growth and residential and commercial development?
Yeah, it's just built up everywhere.
I worry about the poultry companies to be able to continue.
Yeah.
But with all that worry, we did have a great past and a lot of great memories.
It was fun growing up on a farm.
It
It
was.
was fun. It was hard. I mean, we were little girls and we had to work like slaves.
Oh,
We-
what a
Oh
shame.
my gosh,
Oh,
Bonnie.
really, Bonnie?
Well, we had to get up at sunrise. Dad would come in and say, "Come on, girls, up and at 'em."
And then
You
we
know?
got to listen to Ralph Hobie, Troubadour of the Eastern Shore, on the
Yeah.
radio, and we all hated it.
That was at breakfast. Mom was fixing breakfast. Dad was getting us up. The radio was on. And we always had breakfast together, like every morning. We
And
really
Jackie and
had
I were
dinner every
sleeping
night.
in.
Yeah, you were sleeping in.
But we really had every meal together.
Yeah.
Breakfast,
Yes.
lunch,
Yep.
and dinner.
Yep.
Even if we had to have it out in the field. I
Right.
remember
on
Mom.
the tailgate.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yep, I
Bringing
remember that.
sandwiches and stuff.
And we always had meals, like
Yeah.
cooked meals.
Home cooked meals.
You know, Mom was always taking out that roast of beef from you guys' favorite cow
George
that
Henry.
got harvested. Yeah, so it was,
Yeah, but we worked up an appetite. I mean, we had to work in the chicken house every summer. Summer vacation they called it. Wasn't a vacation for us, believe me. You know, we started hoeing first, and then at harvest time we had to pick harvest. We had to do watermelons, cantaloupes, and the dreaded cucumbers. You know, one time, Nancy, you'll remember this. You weren't there, but that day that Mom got sick and she couldn't drive. See, we used to, pick the cantaloupes and watermelons, put them in a pile, then we'd load them. You know, Dad would stack them in the bed of the truck. And this one day, Mom got sick, and we had hired help, or workers from the prison to help us. And Dad didn't want them to drive the truck, so he told me, "Get up there and drive the truck." I was like 8 or 9 years old. I could even hardly reach the clutch and all the way in.
That's one of my favorite
my
memories
gosh.
with Dad was
Oh my
learning
gosh.
to drive that 47 Chevy pickup. We had gone
Yeah.
back to feed the hogs, and he jumped on the running board. He wasn't even in the cab with me. He was on the running board, and he goes, "All right, you're going to drive back up to the house."
That's how we
And the
learned.
steering wheel is this big.
You had to look under the top of it.
Yes,
yeah.
you did. I could not get the clutch already pushed in unless I was on the very edge of the seat. And then you choke started it with your right foot. And then it was it was in the floor because you had that
And then
thing
it had
that
a
pulled
low
out.
Yeah, that was for reverse.
but
Yeah.
we were all learned to drive like that, and
No,
we
I
were
was
good
9.
drivers.
But don't you remember how you started? You would be sitting in Daddy's lap. He'd have the window down. He would let you hang out the window like you were a dog. And then he would say, "Oh, I can't drive anymore." And he put his hands down and you would take the steering wheel, and that's how you went down the road. You learned the steering by that way, by in his lap.
I always remember you and Donna riding in the pickup with Dad, and you would stand beside
Yep.
him in the pickup, and you would go into town standing beside him the whole time.
Well, you know what their seatbelt was? The elbow.
Yeah,
Hold
you
back.
Yeah,
And I
Yeah.
still do that to this day,
yeah.
regardless
That's
of who's
funny.
in the car.
And I think that's why you guys never wanted to go start school for
Yeah.
first grade.
Because it was fun hanging out with
Yeah,
Dad.
because you got to go all these places and school wasn't going to be that much fun.
And when in those rides in town when we were standing on the seat, actually probably a little older than because I remember it so well, going to Baker's Seed Store,
Yeah,
and that was where the guys hung out and
Play cards.
farmers gossiped,
yeah.
women gossiped, farmers really gossiped.
It was called networking.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they would just kind of let Jackie and I run around the seed store. We had our hands and stuff and.
And eating Lance crackers and drinking
Yes,
Cokes.
and it was a treat to get a Coca-Cola.
Do you remember, it was on the Dalby farm, and we had a really downpour of rain, and the sugar babies were ready to be picked? Do you remember on our bellies swimming in the water trying to find the sugar babies? Because
Oh
it was
my gosh.
so flooded. It was in that square field.
Yep, that was
in that-
surrounded by
in the
the
very
woods.
back. And we picked them, and I remember Mom really being mad when Daddy brought us home because we were soaking wet and muddy.
Packed with mud.
And
Yeah.
if I remember it correctly, that load of sugar babies that we took to the block the next day, Dad wasn't happy with the price, and we had to bring them back home, unload them because we needed the pickup for that day, and then obviously then you'd have to load them back on the pickup to take them into the block at another time, hoping he'd get that penny more for them.
We spent a lot of time at that block,
Hmm.
Yeah, we
all of
did.
us. You guys, when you were little, just going with Dad, Bonnie and I would spend an entire day there moving the pickup 6 feet at a time till you got to the auction part.
Yeah.
And you know what was
And you
the-
don't see that anymore.
No,
It's not like that at all.
but it was fun. It was always fun, and you
And
got
you drove from the farm in town when you were 15 and passed the state police officer. Remember that?
yes.
I was like, oh, she's going to be
Because
arrested.
we had to get the trucks in
Oh,
there
yeah, we had
when
the two trucks
they
to
were
leave
loaded
overnight.
up and
Yep.
ready to go. I always remember one of my memories. Dad really liked Johnny Hastings. Remember Johnny Hastings? He and Dad would talk. He was just a nice kid, you know. I mean, he was just one of those friendly kids. And one time I had to unload cantaloupes, and Johnny came over and finished unloading my load for
Wow,
me.
you were lucky.
Yeah, he was just really one of those nice people.
Well, didn't he finish because he didn't want you around the talk of the guys that
Yes,
were on
they
the
were.
trailer?
They were talking
Badly.
block talk.
Block talk.
Yeah, yeah. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah,
Another
gosh.
fun memory that that is very fond of me is when we had I guess for all sense and purposes, the chicken killing days, when my mom would come over and Miss Lottie was there and Aunt Bees was there, and everybody had a job, and it was neat because obviously all those chickens that we were harvesting is what we were eating off of that winter, but it was a big community and family event.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes there were neighbors there.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. There was always activity. It seemed like the farm was like a lot of moving pieces, and everything was coordinated around the farm. Your whole life was coordinated around the farm. Your social activity, your, putting your food away for the winter, being able to just have fun riding my horse. My favorite thing to do was every spring when Dad was plowing, to be able to ride my horse while he was plowing. And it was just a beautiful scene. I love that smell of dirt, and the seagulls would be flying over top, and Dad would be, kind of, how farmers always had that half turn on the seat looking at what they're plowing and looking straight ahead at the same time, and I'd be riding there beside him. It was just a great
It's a
experience.
shame we don't have a picture of that. That would be.
I know.
That's
I think about
because
that all the time.
visualizing that is a nice.
I remember
nice
my
memory.
hockey coach wanted me to go out for softball, and I told her I really couldn't do softball because that's in the spring, and I like to be out in the fields when it's springtime. I like
Yeah.
that fresh smell of dirt.
Yeah, we did a lot of work, and we had a lot of animals on the farm. You mentioned the pigs, feeding the pigs, and I had befriended a pig. Her name was Sally. She was a sow, and she would let me ride her, and I thought
Yep.
that was kind of fun. But then the bad thing was with our beef cattle that we had, I became friends with one of them, and his name was George Henry, and I just thought he was so neat because he was like a pet. And then he suddenly was gone, and I think he may have appeared on our dinner table.
Once or twice.
Yeah. But it's like,
Because I
What you
remember
do.
George Henry coming home on the school bus, and there he was on the back of the tractor. It's like, okay, that's dinner for many nights.
but he was a nice.
I think one
nice
of the
cow.
things to remember too about the animals is that Daddy was a little bit of a horse whisperer because he just could take on a horse and calm it down or whatever. But they were working out in the chicken house, and Donna and I were playing, I guess, by that oak tree where we had the tire swing, and Duke got out. Remember Duke chasing
buckskin.
us?
Yep.
He
Yeah.
chased you?
Oh, he chased Donna and I get up in that tree and we're screaming,
Oh,
just-
you were exaggerating.
No.
That-
So now let me
because we
finish this.
climbed up in
Let me
those
finish.
mimosa
The
trees.
story is that Daddy came out and he was mad. And Duke was bucking and everything, and Donna and I were scared for our lives. And he hooked Duke up to the back of the pickup, and they went for a ride.
Oh.
And Duke
He
never
wore him
chased
out.
us again. He never chased us again.
Well, when he got out, he would just run and run and run and run. And he was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't that warm, friendly horse.
No, it wasn't.
I remember Duke and Duchess and Ginger and Missy. And Ginger and Missy were Shetland ponies. And Missy, was pregnant. And she had she had to
had
have
twins.
a cesarean.
She had twins.
And the whole community came together to help when the vet came out to the farm.
Well,
and
the
had did
vets came from the
cesarean.
University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and everybody
Wow.
came to help. It was really kind of neat.
Well, that was our, Ginger was our Chincoteague
Oh, that's
Pony.
right. Yeah.
because Dad went to the pony penning and unbeknownst to Mom came home with a pony in the back of the car.
The back seat.
And it
Yeah.
was the new 1955 Buick that was brand spanking new, and he brought a horse home in the back of it, or pony home in the back of it. It was so exciting. And that pony was like, it was like a dog. She used to sit at the back
She would
door. She would
sit.
lay at the back step. She would meet you when you came home off of the school bus. She was the neatest little pony, but you couldn't ride her. She did not want you to ride her. Nobody ever rode her. But she was just like a pet, and Dad loved that pony.
Well,
Loved
remember when Duchess had her colt, and you named her Ratney,
Mm-hmm.
which I always thought was the weirdest name in the world. But it's the only
I
time
was
I've
taking Latin at that time.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever heard a horse named that. And when you wanted to get Ratney to be used to a person on the back of her, and those little black saddle that you started with, you tied my legs onto the stirrups.
Oh, I never would have done that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Remember what she used to do with Duchess? She used to make you and I go in between Duchess's legs, crawl up her, pull on her tail, pull on her ears.
And during that entire time, Nancy had a horse whip in her hand, and it wasn't for the horse.
Oh no, you're exaggerating. You guys exaggerate. I just don't think you have the same memories that I do.
But you know, one thing that is different for Jackie and I than it was for Bonnie and Nancy is that Jackie and I were very young when Dad died, and young when we left the farm, and with you guys so much older. It was, you have different memories and different thoughts of things than Jackie and I, because we were much younger. We didn't have, you know, getting up every summer, because we were limited what we could do.
Speaking of summer, one of my favorite memories is coming home at nighttime and having to go check the chickens.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it was summertime, so the curtains were down. I mean, they don't have curtains today, but we had to crank those curtains up and down, and riding really slow, looking into the chicken house, looking for anything that looked wrong or whatever. And Winston, our German Shepherd, walking right beside the car until, because we didn't go in the house yet. And we'd have the windows down, and Donna and I would be hanging out the back window of the car looking into the chicken house. And at that time, I don't ever remember chickens stinking as bad as they do today. But
I agree. Maybe
It was something-
we were accustomed to it.
maybe for Nancy liked the smell of dirt, we just kind of grew up liking the smell of chickens. But remember that blue Buick when Mom sneezed?
And ran into the post.
Yes.
pasture
Oh
post.
my gosh.
She was allergic to ragweed.
Yeah.
It
Dad
would
was
make her-
aggravated with
Yeah.
her.
Oh, I know.
I thought it was funny. Donna and I thought it was funny as heck.
I
Yeah.
know.
I remember cutting grass, and you know, obviously a riding lawnmower, because there was a lot of grass to cover, and I couldn't have been, but I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years old, maybe 9, and I ran into the house, and instead of just turning the lawnmower off and getting off of it to go get help, I just sat there and it just kept digging and digging a bigger hole. And you know how particular Dad was about the yard. I mean,
Yes,
everything had to
absolutely.
be so perfect. And he was so angry at me. Why didn't you just turn it off and come and get me? You know, of course, then you start to cry, you know, and you're like, I don't. But as angry as he was with me, he just softened everything after that and made it all better. But you know, those are some of those little things that you start. It's like, don't get frustrated. You know, use your head before you do something silly and dig a hole in the yard.
Do you remember cultivating, when Daddy would be cultivating and he would let us ride on that back bar and drag our feet into the dirt?
Yep.
And then Donna and I would jump off when he had to turn. He only allowed us to do it on a straightaway.
Yep.
And when he would have to turn, we'd have to get off and we'd run as fast as we could to try to get back on it. But we drug our feet with no shoes on, no nothing.
That would be child endangerment today.
Oh, yeah. He
Definitely.
wasn't going that fast. I remember you never wearing shoes in the chicken house.
I know.
That's what's wrong with it.
People didn't like
Well,
that.
you
I
ate
couldn't understand
chicken
why.
feed.
I didn't eat chicken feed.
Oh, I
Bonnie
did. It
ate
was
chicken
good.
feed.
Oh my
Especially
gosh.
pellets. We used to go in the chicken house. We had 4 chicken houses, and 2 of them had automatic feeders, and the 2 smaller ones didn't. And you remember number 1 and 2.
And
But-
guess who got to take care of the ones with the automatic feeders? Bonnie.
Not all the time. I helped. And then we had to do, we had a carrier, you know, that we loaded feed in that would go to each room, and we had to take a bucket and fill up the hanging feeders in those 2 houses. But we took care of all that every summer. Nancy and I took care of all the daily
Soon as
chores.
school was out.
you know, and then when school was in, we'd only have to like go check them at night and everything, but we had to wash water pans on Saturdays.
I
You
like
know.
the smell of chicken feed. I
Chicken
remember
feed.
when I got the job at Townsend, I was so happy because I could smell chicken feed all day long.
She's
I
not
like
right.
that smell.
She is
I like
not
the
right.
smell of dirt, and I
Well, I
like
like
the smell of chicken.
fresh turned turkey.
Yeah, there's nothing better
Love
than
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get to smell that much anymore because they don't turn it.
I know.
Everything's
Yeah.
gone to no-till.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah.
A lot of things have changed.
We had a lot of fun growing
Yeah,
up
we
on
did.
that farm.
It was a learning experience. We learned self-reliance and we learned to work together. It was just amazing.
and be able to fix things.
Yeah.
Having a mechanical, not no being mechanically good at things all the time, but you just had a sense of like,
how to fix it.
yeah.
You
Or
got
if
it
you're,
started.
you know, even
Or
today.
even a sense of knowing what was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't know how to
Right.
fix it, you knew something didn't sound right, it didn't
Yeah.
look right, and
Yeah.
then you knew that it needed action.
Yeah.
I
And-
Yeah,
just,
we learned a lot. It was a good way to grow up, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
There was
I
a
know.
lot of challenges on the farm with the storms. You know, remember how Daddy hated the storms? But I remember one storm, and we were on the back step of the farmhouse, and it was the first time I ever had experienced hail. And I had to be really, really young. And of course, you know, Mom was in the house probably fixing something to eat for us all. And he's just standing there watching the hail with no words. And I was really little, and I remember trying to catch the hail and how it
It
hurt.
stung.
And then I started crying because I was concerned about the animals that were out in the hail. And he never said a word. He just picked me up, and we just stood there. And when I think about it today, I think about what was happening to the crops.
Right.
That's what he was
Yeah.
thinking about. Oh my gosh, the animals will survive, but the crops are going to be damaged. And I remember him never saying a word. He just held me, and we just watched it until it went away. But that was my first remembrance of hail.
It was a good life. We had a good farm life.
We did, and the
Closing.
community makes it different too.
Mhm.
I-
community churches.
Yes,
Yeah.
and everybody worked closely together, and I think you still have that today, but in a different than it was when we were growing up.
It was a simpler life.
Yes, it was simpler,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I liked it.
Well, I think it's time to go in for dinner now. You
Okay.
guys
All right.
ready?
Yep,
Yeah,
we're ready.
thanks for the tea, Nance.
I'll take it with me.
What are you fixing?